Now, Q-Bear, like being on the drive time with you for 2 years, you introduced me to a lot of people. Now, I didn't really understand and really know the impact of Spike Moss. Tell me about Spike Moss, man.
You talking about the Spike Moss, not just Spike Moss, the Spike Moss. This is a young brother that is older than I, but at the same time, when it comes to dealing with a lot of the youth, a lot of the young men in the Twin Cities, there's a place called The Way, and The Way was located on Plymouth Avenue, where right now, when The Way no longer existed in that spot, now resides to the 4th precinct of the police department in that very same address. But then one of the things is when it comes to The Way, that was a place where a lot of us youngsters got the opportunity to go in. It's like a community center. And it was where you learned history about your Black history. There was Mahmoud El-Kate, who was like one of the historians of all, who could tell you anything and everything when it comes to life within itself, but the history of what goes on. I mean, there's Vusi, Umusu, Zusu, Zulu. I mean, there's a list goes on of a lot of people that came out of The Way, but then The Way itself was that community spot to where when it comes to a lot of different bands, a lot of different musicians, a lot of different artists, we would get together and have the Battle of the Bands right there on Plymouth Avenue. And it was The Way that was a part of that. Spike Moss was the head guy that put a lot of things in line for the youngsters and all the bands. He managed a lot of different artists from here in the Twin Cities to where it was so much talent that happened right here in the Twin Cities. It's hard to get all the names in of who's who and who's what. All you have to do is check the charts and you'll find out from the Twin Cities how the Minneapolis sound really was. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis was that foundation of the lineup of it. Prince was the top line of that line. But then you can walk around with Mint Condition. You can do The Time. You can do Sue Ann Caldwell, Sherelle. I mean, the list goes on. And when it comes to, being the top producers of the three, then you have to add in so many other groups and different artists who are nationally right now still doing their thing.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great thing, man. You know what the best part about this is? We're about to go to a round table that Dr. Spike Moss is a part of. And I think we even got Bobby Joe Champion. So let's check this out.
We trained our kids to play 6 to 7 instruments. The reason for jazz entertainers write music at levels that no one else writes music. They also invent music while they play on stage. And that's why we want jazz, because no matter what genre of music you go, you will be great if you come out of jazz. And so the focus was on jazz to get them to be experts on their instrument. The greatest thing you can do with an instrument is when you master it. We wanted our kids close enough to master it. So when we started that class, when Sonny became the teacher, that's when Andre Simone walked in. That's when Terry Lewis walked in. That's when Prince walked in. Prince was 12 years old. The one thing I say about Prince, he would be the first kid at class. Spike, we got class today? Yes, we do. He couldn't wait to get in that class. He loves music so much. We began to produce 8 to 9 bands a year that could make it. Had we not been in Minnesota, we would have created the second Motown right out of here at 8 to 9 bands a year. You remember I sent a message to everybody when I took the best band I had and I changed their name to The Family.
Okay.
And The Family was on it.
Okay.
But the name was what I was looking for. And so I changed their name from Back to Black to The Family. And that name stuck. That's the band that Prince played in as rhythm guitar player. Prince became part of Andre's family. That's where he lived. He lived with Bernadette, who was one of my board presidents, Bernadette Anderson. So when he got with him, they were best friends. And when the problem happened, he lived with them for the remainder.
And that goes back to community, because if somebody
She was at the Way too.
Yeah.
if there's something that a person needed in the community,
They
we were
stepped
there.
up. He moved right in that house and never missed a beat. Went to school, did everything he's supposed to do. Came to band practice, kept moving forward. Bernadette didn't even hiccup about it. He needs a place to stay, let him stay here. And that's what he did. But I mean, all of it was an experience because you're teaching them not only how to go forward, but you're teaching them how to survive.
But Spike, you're legendary. Ever since I came to the Twin Cities,
I was aware of you on the edges, and then I got to be more personally involved. But all the things you're talking about, I saw from a distance, and it's encouraging, it's inspirational. But there's a face to this thing that I've become aware of that I really would like to hear you and Bobby Joe play through on. And that is, while you were doing the way and while you were touching the lives of so many young people, somebody might look back afterwards and say, well, did it make a difference really? Is there any demonstration that what you did, how you sold into people made a difference?
I was the first person in my whole entire family to go to college. By this time, no one else had gone to college. And they would say, the way would say, hey, the reason why we're taking you on the college campus is because if you can see yourself here, you have to see yourself here. And I was like, oh my God, oh, well, okay. And through that, I always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew I wanted to be the Black Perry Mason.
You reached in this whole process of the way, dealing with all kinds of young people who were dealing with esteem issues, lack of exposure issues, lack of understanding history and the pride issue, all that. And then you sold into them. And so for me, there's an embodiment here. We talk stuff about mentoring and helping, but here's a real life deal. What you placed into Bobby Joe, and then to see two additional steps of that. He talked about first one in his family to go to college. Seeded by the fact that you allowed him to see that was a possibility for him. He didn't see that in his big brother, big sister, but you allowed him to see that in many other young people.
It kind of tears me up because he's that kid that wouldn't stop saying, come on now. I can't.
Yeah.
It was community, intentionally. My goodness.
Everything that you could possibly do to take kids to another level where they would not lose their self-esteem. See, the generations out here today, society has took their self-esteem from them. When you lose that, you also lose your motivation. If you lose both, you might lose your love of self. So my goal was to put back in the lives of poor kids what other kids have, so they could feel better about themselves and strive, but also expose them so they could see what's possible. Amen. So when Bob went to college, he became the model for the poor kids in the North Side. Now my relationships, with James Brown they would come to the way. My relationship with Ali come to the way. David Ruffin, leader of Temptation, come to the way. So they were also exposed to other black people who are successful because Anilu Hamer came to the way, Stokely Carmichael came to the way, Dick Gregory came to the way. They were always exposed, and so it's to let them see that's you.
I think that there's a transcendent message from the way, from our community that needs to go forward. And we all grew up with Bobby Joe, not so much you, Spike and I, in the civil rights era, and one of the songs we used to sing, hold on, hold on.
You couldn't resist.
I had to sing.
You had to sing.
Just a little while
Keep
longer.
your eyes on the prize.
That's right.
The problem that came, because the injustices, the oppression, the discrimination are consistent. Human beings do that to each other. The problem that came out of the civil rights era was we lost sight of the real prize. And when we talk about what happened at the Way, what happened with you and Bobby Joe and Excelsior going forward, the prize underneath that is community. The prize is a sense of commitment to one another and accountability with one another. Yes. So whatever the struggle of the hour is, if you hold on to that precious thing, which is the fact that we're in relationship. Yeah. I got your back. You know what I mean? We'll cry together. We'll rejoice together because we are community. And I think that is the message that needs to go forward from this hour and every hour. Whatever the challenge of the moment might be, don't give up the sense of connectedness and value of one another, community going forward.
Yes, when you think about the Way, it's all about community. Amen. Everything that we do is really all about community. about making sure that we understand our history, that we don't repeat the negative things about our history, but that we are committed to moving our community forward. Amen. I think that's the spirit, right?
Amen.
You know, of understanding community and being connected
Amen.
and committed to each other.
Amen.
And
Connected
understand
and
it intergenerationally as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Respect for our elders and what they've done. Sometimes it's just as simple as listening. The way, just like the church, is not a building. Mm-hmm. It is the value and the spirit in which must permeate into the masses. So when we talk about these values, these are values and components that I believe are important when we think in terms of community and what has to, as you often say, Babington, no matter if you have all your organs, if you don't have blood that is flowing between it, and if you don't have life,
it's all gonna die.
You guys were deep in the issue of the way it's evolution, and I know a lot of people came through there. You know, you're our prize on the wall, Bobby Joe, but who else came out of that situation?
Well, you had Sonny Thompson, you know, who was one of the youngest bass players for Prince. Excuse me, he ended up playing for Prince, but he originally was playing for James Brown.
Oh, wow.
And that was interesting because James Brown was looking for someone, and Spike said, "Hey, this young guy that lives here in Minnesota can beat anyone that you put up." And they
remember that?
Yeah, they were well, because everyone was talking about it, because they're like, "Oh, James Brown's folks gonna come in here, Sonny," right? And they put up, James Brown put up his person, Spike and the others put up Sonny Thompson, and James Brown was like,
"Where you get this kid?"
"Hey, Sonny, come on."
He said, "Can you get him in Nashville to record this week?" I had to send him that week.
Wow.
So Sonny Thompson, you had Andre Simone, you had Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam.
Terry was good at track and football. Not just
he was
music.
fast at track. Yeah. Everyone talked about that too.
Yeah.
You know, Moore's Day.
Yeah.
All
Moore's
the others.
Day was there. There was hardly, if kids was really about it, we had our hands on them first, and many of them did go to college after that. Many of them went to college. There's a young lady that was running North Commons Park from the last 2 or 3 years before the pandemic.
And there's like Rico Alexander, who is in another area of life. But I just wanted to be clear, not everyone went into arts, but there's other academic-driven fields that a lot of us went into, right? And it goes all the way back to the way. So, you know, even when we talk about the Minnesota Miss Black Minnesota pageant, Javita still came through there. Geraldine still, at the time, came through there.
Marvin Smith has his own company for construction. And what kids don't have today is we've knocked the mess out of love between them. Our boys don't love our little girls anymore. Our boys don't love our children anymore. We got to rebuild that. We don't even see our women the way we used to see them. We call them queens and flowers. They're saying things that I grew up, he's never heard me say. You know, B's and H's and all of that. We loved them, and our mothers taught us not only to love them, but protect them and respect them. That's what we've lost. The guys use the N-word on each other. We never said the N-word, let alone use it on somebody. We would know it's offensive. The girls in my generation, if you'd have said a word like an H or a B, we didn't even have to touch you. She lit you up. Now, if you tried to fight her back, we lit you up. See, because you don't want to say it. We make these girls today think that's their name and their title. The way would have never allowed that. This man grew up in a building where he never heard a black person do any of that. And we got to, whatever we do to rebuild a community center like the Way, those values got to come back, because these children are only lost because they've never had an opportunity to have those values. Think about children for the first time in our history in the thousands with no religion, no church, no pastor, no understanding of the Bible. So what is your foundation then? Is it the street? Is it drugs? Is it alcohol? Is it jail? Is it gang banging? Is it going to prison? What is your foundation? See, because ours, it had to deal with the real spirit of God, the real spirit of the Lord. I remember when Prince's sister called me when Prince died, and she wanted me to do something for her. And I said, no problem. She said, Spike, I want to remind you of something. She said, you didn't just take care of Prince. Remember you gave us all breakfast and lunch, and you gave us something to do every day, and we was always safe? So I was at home one night, she called me up. She said, Spike, we're having a big argument. I said, who is it? She said, the whole family. I said, what's wrong? Said, Prince doesn't want to use the name Prince no more. We're arguing with him. We only know him by his name, Roger Nelson. Well, he wants to change his name. Spike, what do we do? And I said, well, what did Prince tell you? She said, well, he calmed it down. That's the reason I called you. I said, well, what did he do? He said, don't you remember Spike? And everybody said, yeah. He told me don't never be a slave, so I'll just be a symbol till we get it straight. Kids learning and holding on to what you teach them.
All right. Oh my God, Q-Bert, you know you got to clap for that, man. Come on, man.
Oh, ain't no question. Ain't no question.
Right. So that is great, y'all. And just to let you know, this is what's coming up in the next few days because we're leading up to the premiere. So get your tickets as the film is only showing for a limited time of 4 days. And there's going to be more to come tomorrow night. Are you going to be here, Q-Bear?
Oh, ain't no question. I'm like that blind guy that can see everything. I'm there.
You talking about Stevie Wonder.
Oh.
We'll see y'all tomorrow, man. We see y'all tomorrow.